Hello guys, my name is Pablo, and in this video I will show you how to deploy your Medusa server and Medusa storefront for production ready use. So in this video we'll quickly go over architecture and requirements. We will configure our backend and all necessary plugins. We will deploy it on DigitalOcean, and we will configure our front end and deploy it on Vercel. So this is a high overview of our tech stack. We're gonna be hosting our Medusa server on DigitalOcean with the app platform that will automatically scale our app. We're gonna use PostgreSQL for our database, Redis for event bus and caching, and S3 spaces to host our media files. For storefront, we're gonna use Vercel, which offers serverless functions that can scale really well. And we're gonna use Stripe for payments, SendGrid for transactional emails, and Meilisearch for our search engine. So the first thing I have to do is I have to make sure I have all necessary dependencies installed on my machine. And the first one that we will need is Node.js. This is a JavaScript runtime engine on which Medusa server runs. We will need Git as our code-based management tool. We're going to be using it with GitHub, and we will need PostgreSQL database as well. But in this tutorial, I will be directly connecting it to DigitalOcean PostgreSQL, so it won't be necessary. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a parent directory for both server and storefront on my desktop. And I will open it in my IDE. And I'll proceed to docs to create a Medusa app. I'll copy this command here. And I'll open my integrated terminal. And while running this command, I will also add flag skip db because we want to install our database later. I'm going to be connecting it directly to Postgres database on DigitalOcean, but if you're running a local database, you can do it without the flag, and it will prompt you to connect to a database. I will select to deploy NextJS storefront as well. And I will wait until it finish setting up. And our setup is complete. The next step that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna initialize Git and commit code to our GitHub repositories. So I'm first gonna go into my backend folder. And I'll run git init. Then I will run git add at root. And then I'll run git commit. And I'll add a very short message plus. Then I'll do the same for my front end directory. So I'll go back to my parent and I'll go to my Medusa storefront and do the same things. Then I'll go to my GitHub and I'll create 2 new repositories. So I'll create first Medusa tutorial backend, and I'll keep it public. I'll copy this those commands here below to push the existing repository. And I'll go back to my parent and I'll go to my backend folder. I'll run those commands, and if I refresh my screen, I have committed my code base here, and I will do the same for my front end. go back to my parent, go back to my storefront folder, and upload it here. And if I refresh the page, I have my NextJS starter template committed to GitHub. After we have our code base for both backend and frontend connected, the next step would be preparing our backend for deployment on DigitalOcean. So I've already logged into DigitalOcean, and we would need to create two resources. We would need Postgres database, and we would need Redis. So I'll go to my databases, and I'll create database cluster, and I will first start with Postgres database. I'll keep all settings standard, but you can, depending on the size of the store you're planning to run, you can edit these accordingly. So I'll change the name. Medusa tutorial, database Postgres, New York City 3. And I will repeat the same for my Redis. I'll create database cluster. I'll select Redis. I keep everything standard. And create database cluster. So it will take some time to create those, usually not more than 10 minutes. So while my databases are creating, I'm going to proceed to Medusa docs, and I'm going to go to deploy section. I'll select DigitalOcean, and I'll follow instructions necessary to prepare my server for deployment to DigitalOcean. So the first thing we have to do is to change the startup command and package JSON. So I'll copy this command here. I'll go to my IDE. I'll open my package JSON file. And here, I'll change my start command to run migrations. And I'll save the file. Then the database connection string is a bit different for DigitalOcean, so we need to edit our Medusa config as well. So I'll go to my Medusa config file, and here our database connection string here. I'll replace it with the code from documentation. We will also need to add project config. So I'll copy this code here, and I'll navigate to my project config. It's right here. You can see it's called in modules export. So I'm gonna add the line of code here. We will also be using Redis. So I will uncomment Redis event bus and cache service modules here. And I will also uncomment that line to enable Redis. And I'll save the file. We will also need to make changes to gitignore file. That file is preventing some of the files to be committed to your Git. This is usually done for security purposes. You don't want to commit your env file because it contains sensitive keys. But in that case, we need to remove yarn log and package log.json. So I'll remove those and save the file. And that concludes our initial backend preparations for our server part. So I'll navigate back to my parent directory, and I'll navigate inside of my server directory, and I'll commit code to GitHub. So I'll run git add root, git commit with a very simple message, and git push. And it will update my repository on GitHub. Updated just now. So if I open my Medusa config.js, all the edits are saved here. So the next step would be creating an app hosting on DigitalOcean. I already have my GitHub provider connected here, so I'll create an app. I will select GitHub, and it will load all of my repositories, and I'll select Medusa tutorial backend. I'll keep other settings standard. So here I will actually edit configurations for my app deployment, and I'll change resource size to 2 gigabytes of RAM for dedicated compute, and I'll set my containers to auto-scale. And you can adjust those settings depending on the expected volume your store will have. But that essentially will take care of automatic scaling. And you can always adjust these settings as you go. So I'll hit save here. I will also change my port because Medusa production runs on port 9000, and I'll hit save. For the environmental variables, I'm gonna follow the suggested documentation variables. So I'll just copy this code here, and I'll click edit, and I'll click bulk editor, and I will paste everything in here. And beware that you should replace those secret values with secure generated values. But for now, I'll keep them standard. And for those dynamic values, we have to enter our database values here. So I'll keep it as is for now, and I'll come back to it once I deploy the app. And I'll just edit the name. Hit save. I will edit the region to New York. And I'll review everything and create resources. So the next step would be attaching our Redis and Postgres to this app. So you would click on create and create or attach database. So in our case, we already created both Postgres and Redis. So I'll also like previously created DigitalOcean database, and I'll go with Postgres and enter default values, click attach database, and repeat the same process for Redis. So it will attach resources to our app, and then we can go in and configure our environmental variables. So here, I will start typing the $sign and bracket, and it will pull the quick list of options I can select. So I'll select my Postgres database, And in this case, this is username, so I'll select username. And I'll just select this port and replace DB with my database name. And same thing for Redis. So it's Redis and its database URL. And that is automatically created by DigitalOcean. We won't need that. And I'll hit save. And that should initiate another deployment for us. So I'll go to my build logs and we can monitor progress here. Now our build is complete and we proceed to deployment stage. So it will run migrations and create all necessary items in the database. And we got the message that our deployment is successful. And we can see the link here. So if we go there and type health, we see that our app is healthy. And if I add /app, the login panel will welcome us. But now the problem is I did not create a admin user. So we would have to connect from our local machine to the database and create the user. So the way to do that, we have to go to our databases, select our Postgres database, go to the settings, edit our trusted resources, and add our IP address here. So it's trusted. And I will have to open my local Medusa backend, go to my env file. I will rename that to remove the template and enter our database credentials here. So because we modified how our database const is built, we will have to use these values here. So I'll go into my env, I'll paste that, and I will remove those parts of the code. And I'll replace all. And I will enter my credentials here. I can actually copy everything here and just copy it like this. Delete the rest and save the file. So I'll open Medusa docs and I will search create admin user. I'll copy this command here. I'll make sure I'm in my admin folder. I'll paste the command and this you can add the password and the email. And I'll run this command. And it will let me in my, my dashboard. So as you can see, it gave me a bunch of errors, but it still creates the user. So I'll click on Begin Setup. I will create a sample product. It will create a Medusa t-shirt for me. And I will go to the settings. And guys, this is an important step. You need to create a region for your store. And I already have European region. And I'll add North America. US, tax 1%. I'll add Canada, and I'll add United States. I'll select manual payment provider and manual fulfillment provider, and I'll hit create region. So the next step we'll take is prepare our storefront for deployment on Vercel. So I'll go to Vercel, I'll open my Vercel, and I will add new project. I'll select Get repository with Medusa tutorial frontend. And here I'll need to configure my environmental variables, and I can reference the env local file here. So I will select default public region here. I will change my default regions to EU, and I will copy my Medusa backend URL. So that URL is where our backend is hosted. So I'll copy the link and I'll paste it here, and make sure there is no trailing slash. Otherwise you will get an error. And I'll enter our next public base URL, but we don't have it yet because we haven't deployed it. I'll deploy it and add it later. So I'll hit deploy. And our deployment is successful. So I'll go to my dashboard and I can visit the URL, and here our store. But if I go to the store, here are products. And I can select the product, add it to cart, and I can check it out. And our delivery is empty. So I'll go back to my Medusa admin. I'll add a shipping option here of $1. Save it and make sure that my fulfillment method is visible. Click Save and Close and go back to my checkout. And now I can select Test, Continue to Payment, Test Payment, and place the order. And if I go back to my admin, I can see my order here. So the next step would be adding plugins to our store. And the first one I'm going to do is Meilisearch, is to enable product search in our store. In this case, I'm going to be using hosted version, but Meilisearch is open source and you can always self-host it. But for this tutorial, I'll go and I'll create a new project. And right now it's creating. So I'll open official documentation and search Meilisearch and follow the instructions to install it. So I'll copy the command. I'll come back to my IDE, make sure I'm on my Medusa server folder, run the command. It will install the plugin, and I will have to configure my envs. So I'll copy the env template here. I would need my master key, and I'll need my host. And I'll save it. Next, we will have to configure our Medusa config file and add it to plugins. So if you copy this here these options. Example, it wouldn't work because it needs to follow this structure, and obviously we want more than just the product ID. So I have prepared my config. It will be available in the public repository. So I'm going to copy the config, go to my MedusaJS config, and add it to the list of plugins, and save the file. The next step is I would have to add configuration to the NextJS storage template. So I will go to my NextJS storefront folder. I'll go to my store config.json, and I'll enable future search true. Save the file. And I will enter these envs directly into my Vercel. So on my Vercel, I can go to settings, environmental variables, and add them here. So I'll copy my endpoint. I'll copy my public key. And public key is default search API key. And I'll copy my index products. I will come back to my parent directory, and I'll go into my Medusa storefront, and I'll get add, get commit, get push. So I updated my Medusa storefront with the latest environmental variables on Vercel, and it will push those, it will redeploy based on my GitHub commit. After that, I will configure my Stripe plugin. So I will navigate and I will search Stripe in Medusa Talks, and I'll follow the official tutorial. So I'll open my Stripe. I already have my Stripe account created. So I go to developers, API keys. So these keys I'll use while configuring my Stripe plugin, and I'll follow installation. So I'll come back to my IDE. I'll go back to my parent and go into my Medusa server folder, and I'll run npm install Medusa payment Stripe plugin, and it will install the plugin. Next, I will need to configure my Medusa config file, and I'll copy code, go back to my Medusa plugins, and add the plugin here. And I will need to include my envs. So I'll create new envs for Stripe. And I'll need the webhook secret as well. So for my secret key, it's here. So you can copy that value here and enter it here. And for my webhook secret, I go to webhooks. I'll create a new endpoint. I will copy our admin link of where it's hosted on DigitalOcean. I'll paste it here. Medusa tutorial. And I will select all events for now and click create and add endpoint. And I will click reveal signing key. I'll copy the key and I'll paste it here and save the file. We would need to add Stripe envs to our NextJS storefront as well. So if I look at the env local template, it has next public Stripe key. So I would need that environmental variable, and I'll go to my Vercel env settings. I'll copy Stripe publishable key, and I'll paste it here and click save. And I will copy my domain here and add it to my envs as well. I'll edit it and paste the value here, hit save, go back to my deployments, and I'll just redeploy it to have all the envs applied. After we have finished configuring our Stripe plugin, the next one will be SendGrid to send transactional emails to our clients on the e-commerce store. So I already have set up my SendGrid account. You can follow tutorials online on how to set it up for yourself. But I will go back to Medusa docs and search SendGrid. And I will follow the instructions on how to set up SendGrid. So first thing, I will install the plugin. I'll make sure I am in my Medusa server folder. So there's Medusa tutorial storefront. This is my storefront, and Medusa tutorial. This is my server folder. And I'll run npm install Medusa plugin SendGrid, and that will install the plugin. Next, I would add these keys, env keys, to my .env file. And I will also add the order placed line here. And I will go with the standard example here for my Medusa config. Save the file and come back to my envs. So first we would need to create an API keys. You can go to settings, API keys, create API key. I'll go with full access, Medusa tutorial. I'll copy the key, paste it here. The email from this is gonna be an email that you have set up your account to work with. In my case, this is my personal Gmail. And we will need to create a dynamic template. So you can read all the guides on dynamic templates and how to create it, but I'll create a very simple one. Go to my email API, dynamic templates, create dynamic template. I'll call it Medusa tutorial, new template, order placed. And I'll add the version. I'll go with code editor, and I'll just say, thank you for your order. And I'll add ID as well to test the dynamic values. I'll save it, come back, and here I can find my template ID, and I'll add it to my envs here and save it. So once that's complete, we can commit our code, our backend server code, to our GitHub. So I'll go git add root, git commit, and git push. So while my repository is being updated, I'll copy all these environmental variables, and I'll come back to my DigitalOcean. I'll go to my app platform. I'll go to my Medusa tutorial app. I'll go to settings, and I'll select component here, Medusa tutorial, and I'll click edit envs. I'll hit on bulk editor, and I'll just paste all these envs here at the end. I'll delete comments, and I will hit save. Hit save, and it will update our env variables and trigger redeployment. So I'll go to my build logs, and our deployment is successful. I'll go to my live app, and I'll add app at the end so we can see it here. And let's test out our plugins. So the first plugin I want to test is Meilisearch. So I'll go to my storefront, and I'll go to search, and I'll type T. I'll type some random character. So here it seems like it's working. Just to be sure, I'm going to open Meilisearch dashboard, and I'll open search preview, and I will type t-shirt. And as you can see, we're indexing title, description, thumbnail, and handle. So that's working. Now let's test our Stripe. So before testing our Stripe, we have to actually activate it on the backend. So I will go to my regions, and I will edit the region details, and payment provider, I'll add Stripe, and I'll hit save and close. And I'm gonna be using a temporary email to test my SendGrid integration as well. So I'll copy this email, and I'll come back to my storefront, and I'll search for product, t-shirt. I'll select the product, add to cart, go to my cart, go to checkout, and fill out information here. And I'll paste my test email here. Select delivery option, and I'll choose credit card, and I'll enter test number, continue and review, and place order. And the order is successful. Let's test our transactional email. And this transactional email worked. We got the email with the dynamic value order ID, and it says thank you for your order. And let's see it on Medusa. I go to orders, here's my new order, and says payment awaiting. So I'm gonna open Stripe. I go to payments, and as we can see, I got a new payment, and the status is uncaptured. Here's our customer. So I'm gonna go back to my Medusa admin and hit capture payment, and it says successfully captured payment. So if I refresh this page, you will see that my payment is indeed captured. So our search working, our SendGrid integration for transactional emails working, and our Stripe for capturing payment working. You might consider is to add the store course settings on your backend env configurations. So I can add it and restrict my store so I don't have any store course yet, so I'll add store course and I will restrict it to my storefront URL. And it will redeploy my project. And our new deployment is successful. And just to make sure my store course is working properly, I'm just gonna access my product and make sure I'm hitting Medusa Server. I can add it to cart, go to my cart, go to checkout, and as you can see, it's working fine. And the last plugin that we're going to install is Spaces Object Storage plugin. That will help us store our media files on a DigitalOcean. So I'll go ahead and I will create a new storage. I'll create a Spaces bucket. And I'll leave everything standard. And I'll name it Medusa Tutorial Bucket. And I'll create Spaces bucket. And I'll open official Medusa docs for the Spaces plugin, and I will follow installation tutorial here. So I'll copy the command and I'll make sure I'm in my Medusa Server folder, and I'll run the command. I'll copy env variables and I'll paste them here. I'll save the file and I will copy plugins config and I will paste it right here where my plugins config is. I'll save the file and I will go to my DigitalOcean and I will generate the API key for the Spaces object storage. So I'll go to API and I'll go to Spaces key and I'll generate a new key. And I'll copy my secret key because I won't be able to see it another time. I'll go to env and I'll paste my secret key right here. I'll also copy my key ID and I'll paste it here. I will come back to the Spaces configuration on Medusa docs and I will follow the instructions here. Space region, space bucket, and space URL. So space URL I can grab from here. I will go to my object storage again. I'll select my bucket and I'll copy my origin endpoint. So that would be my space URL. My space name would be Medusa Tutorial Bucket. And my space region would be New York City 3. And my endpoint is my region.digitaloceanspaces.com. So I'll copy this value here and I'll paste it here. And I'll save the file. So once that's done, I'll go git add, git commit, git push. That will update my remote repository. And I'll copy these env variables and I'll add them to my DigitalOcean app. So I'll go to app platform. I'll select my app. I'll go to settings. I'll pick Medusa tutorial backend as my resource. And I'll edit my environmental variables. And I'll just paste my spaces envs here and hit save. And hit save again. And that should prompt a new deployment. And I'll go to my build logs and wait until my server is deployed. And our deployment went live. So I'm gonna open the admin URL, open my dashboard, and I'll go and test our Spaces plugin. So I'll create a new product. I'll say test product. And I will add a thumbnail. And I'll click publish product. And if I open DigitalOcean and refresh my Spaces bucket, I'll see that I have this image here now. So the next step, I will need to configure my storefront to accept images from my bucket. And I'll need to grab my bucket URL. And I'll open my IDE. I'll navigate to parent directory and to my Medusa storefront. And I'll open my storefront. And I'll go to next.config.js and I will need to add the URL and the remote patterns. So I'll grab the URL here and I'll replace it here. This I can now delete. I'll save the file and I will commit it to GitHub. So when I open my Vercel, it should trigger new deployment. And as you can see, it's building and our build and deployment complete. So I'm gonna visit the page. I'll go to menu, store. And as you can see, our product image is loaded from the DigitalOcean. And the URL can be found right here. So it's from the DigitalOcean Spaces bucket. It works great. So to recap, we have successfully deployed our Medusa server to DigitalOcean app platform with auto-scaling and our NextJS storefront to Vercel serverless, along with all necessary plugins for your store to function in production environment and scale well. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, reach out to me. You can find me on Discord and official Medusa server. You can also post your questions and help. I oftentimes look there, and have a nice day.